Hey guys, what is going on? Today in the math lab, we are taking a look at how to create a graph from a table. So let's get straight into it. So when we are going from a graph to a table, it's important to note that there is many different types of graphs, many different types of equations. But the good thing about going from a table directly to a graph is the process is pretty much exactly the same no matter what type of graph it is. So let's get straight into it. So we have here our notes page. Let's set this up nice and neat in our books. And we're just going to start off with a table since we are going from a table to a graph. Now in the table, we're going to start off with the titles X and Y. This is our X axis and our Y axis. Now, depending on which type of graph, we'll tell you which type of X values you need. For this first one, we're just going to set up a very basic linear graph. So we're going to start out the number 0 and increase by 1 each time. Now, these numbers do continue on. However, we're just going to go up to 3, from 0 up to 3, and see what that looks like on our graph. Now I'm just going to pick some numbers for our Y value. Let's start with the number 6, and then let's go up in, let's say in threes. So 9, and then 12, and then 15. So these are our values that we're going to plot. When we plot them in our graph, we need to make sure we draw our graph nice and neatly so we know where everything goes. This will be our graph. And one thing that a lot of people get mixed up with is a lot of people think that the X values and the Y values, or the X axis and the Y axis, need to be the same scale, but that's not true. So the X and Y, they actually have nothing to do with each other. So we can take a look at our table here and we see the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3. So on our X axis, since that is titled X, we're going to use those values. 0 right in the corner, 1, 2, and 3. And when you set this up, make sure that these distances between values are equal. On the y-axis, we're actually going up to the number 15. So our y-axis will not be the same numbers that we see on the x-axis. On the x-axis, we had 0, 1, 2, 3. And on the y-axis, we're going to go up to 15. So this number up here, up the top here, I'm going to make this our number 15. That puts 5 here and 10 here. And then 15 right up the top. I'm not going to write the number 15. We'll just know that it's there because the pattern from 0 to 5, from 5 to 10, and 5 to 15 will continue. These arrows, by the way, do mean that the numbers continue on. So just because we see only 0, 1, 2, and 3 here does not mean that those are the only numbers. And really, we should put arrows on the other ends as well. But usually we just don't do that for whatever reason. Okay, now we get to actually creating the table. So we see in our first row here in our table, we have the numbers 0 and 6. That's 0 on the x-axis because that's in the x column, and 6 on the y-axis because that's in the y column. So on the x-axis, we always start with the x-axis. On the x-axis, we're looking for the number 0. There's 3, there's 2, there's 1. Oh, 0's right in the corner. So our first value, 6, will correspond to the number 0, which is right on this axis. So 0, and then we're going to go up 6. Now we have 5 here, 10's up there, so 6 is right there. We just have to do a little bit of mental math to figure out where 6 is on this graph. The next numbers are 1 and 9. So on the x-axis, we're going across to 1, which is right here, and we're going to go up 9. There's 5, there's 10, 9 is right there. Now in some cases, in some subjects, they teach you to put a cross. I like to put dots, but that's up to your teacher and how they do it in their class. The next number is 2 and 12. Let's quickly find that. 2 on the x-axis, and then we go up 12. 10, 11, 12, right there. And the last one is 3 and 15. So we're just stepping through these one at a time. 3 and 15. Now 15 is not shown on this y-axis, but we do have 5 and 10, so we should know where 15 is. And there is all of our dots. Now, depending on the context of the situation, it's possible this may be a continuous graph, and if that's the case, like for example, continuous growth, like if like someone's mass or something like that, if that is the case, then we can join all of these dots up with a nice smooth line. When you do that, don't just go from the first dot to the last dot. Do make sure that you are going through all of the lines. So we're going to start somewhere back here and get out our ruler because we want it to be a nice straight line and draw a line straight through. Keep in mind, when you're drawing lines, you won't be very good at it to start with, and even with a lot of experience, you're going to not get it perfect every time, and that's okay. So there is our linear graph. In a future video, we're going to take a look at how we can find the equation of this graph using both the graph itself and using the table. But for now, we're going to leave it there and jump ahead to the next graph. So now we have our next graph set up. You can see it's pretty much exactly the same. We're just going to go through the exact same process, but I'm going to change the y values. So we still have 0, 1, 2, and 3 on our x values, and on our y values, let's use the numbers 14, 11, 8, and 5. Now remember, these numbers do carry on, but we're not interested in those right now. So we're just going to plot these numbers here. These 3 dots, by the way, do mean that the numbers continue on, just like our arrows on our x and y axis. So just like last time, we're matching them up. 0, 14, let's find that on the graph. 0 comes first on the x axis, so that's across to 0, and up to 14. Let's put a nice big dot there. Next is 1, so go across to 1, and 11 right there. 2 and 8, there's 5, 6, 7, and 8. And the last one is 3 and 5, right in that nice corner crossing line. Just like last time, we'll join those up with a nice straight line, going through all the points as best we can. And that there is what we call a negative graph. Now, the reason we call that a negative graph, we'll get to in a future video when we work out the equations of both the table and the graph. But just for now, remember, if you have a negative graph, then it is going in a downward trajectory, just like this one. These two graphs, this one and the previous one, these are both called linear graphs. So this one is a linear graph, and this one is also a linear graph. Let's just call it a negative linear graph. Pop that up there, negative linear graph. The reason it's called linear is because of this word here, which is line, a straight line. If it is a straight line graph, then it is linear. Let's jump ahead to the next graph. This time things are a little bit different. So you can see we've shifted the graph across a little bit. We have the numbers on the x-axis down here from -2 up to 2. And on the y-axis, we have the numbers 0, 2, and 4. Now it's just a little bit different, but the process is exactly the same. If we have a table of values, which we'll fill in the y values shortly, we can just plot the values as we see them on the graph. So -2, our value will be 4. -1, our value will be 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 4. Now we can see a few things with this table here. We can see that 0 and 0, they line up together, and we have the same numbers from 4 to 4, 1 to 1, and then 0 right in the middle. So this is called symmetrical, and we'll see why it's called symmetrical. You might know that word from geometry. We'll see why that is in a moment once we've plotted the graph. So first, just like last time, we start at the top, -2 and 4. So we go to -2 on the x-axis. So we're searching through here for -2. There it is. And we are going to go up to 4, which is right here. Next up, we have -1, so we'll search for -1 on the x-axis. That's right there. And we're going up to the number 1. Number 1 is halfway between 0 and 2, so that is right there. Next, we have 0 and 0. They go together, and 0, 0 is right there. 0, 0, by the way, is called the origin. 1 and 1 is 1 on the x-axis and 1 on the y-axis, right there. And then we have 2 and 4, 2 on the x-axis, 4 on the y-axis. Now this time, we're not going to join these up with a nice straight line. Instead, we're going to join this up with a nice smooth line. So as best as we can, and this is quite difficult and takes a lot of practice to get right, we're going to connect all of these 5 dots together with a smooth line. Let's see how well we can do. There we go, not bad, not great either. So I'm just going to quickly nudge this down to show us kind of what it should look like. Now this curve graph that you see here, that nice U shape, but it's not really a U shape, this is called a parabola. And that is pretty much how we plot a graph for a different kind of shape. Now we can see that this parabola is what's called symmetrical. Just like we saw in our table here, it's symmetrical about the origin being 0, 0. We can see in our graph as well that the right-hand side is exactly the same as the left-hand side. Now the left and right being the same, being reflected, we call that symmetrical. So let's just add that quickly to our notes. Now, not every function is symmetrical, but in this case, parabolas are. So that is how we move from a table to a graph. Now the process in this case is the same every single time. It doesn't matter what type of graph it is, whether it is a linear graph or a parabola, maybe even something more advanced like an exponential or a trigonometric function. It's all exactly the same process. You find your x values, you find your y values, you plot the dots and then connect them up with a nice smooth line. Now down below I will leave these notes so that you can either print them off or have them as a digital copy, or you can recreate them by rewriting them in your book. Now the best way to learn this kind of stuff is to get lots and lots of practice, but also to write notes in your own handwriting. It's not a good idea just to sit and watch me or someone else do this online. So make sure you do get some practice, and I'll leave a few questions down below so that you can get that practice. In the next few videos, we're going to make more connections between tables and graphs and equations, tables to equations, and all the way back and forth. So make sure you stay tuned for those, and I'll see you there.